Hey everybody, it's Dr. Wood, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about impact factors, what they are, and what they might mean for you when you're going about finding your different sources of literature. So starting off here, this is the HPD library website, which you should be familiar with through your various studies and trying to find your research and whatnot. But the first place I want you to go to is going to be our database here. So you just click on databases and then you go ahead and click on J, and that is going to take us over to all of the databases start with J. And so we want this one here called the Journal Citation Report. So if you go ahead and click on that, let's go ahead and bring that up for us. I just have a few other pages here I'll show you in just a moment, but basically this is a website that will show you what the impact factor of various journals are, and allows you to do some good comparisons and look at some of the stats that go into some of these journals. And so I'll show you what that means in just a moment here. But basically, take any journal you want, any ones you might be working on for your paper. You can look them up here, so you can actually put in the journal name. You can browse by various journals, or you can browse by category. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. But I want to show you an example of a journal here. So let's go ahead and look at one that I use pretty frequently in clinical toxicology, called Clinical Toxicology. Pretty straightforward here. And this is kind of our standard one that we go with for the most part. So anyway, so looking at the journal impact factor, you see it changes year by year, but basically let's click here and see what this means. A journal impact factor of 4.398. What does that mean? Basically, impact factor is an idea of, for every article that you publish in your journal, it will get cited, especially if they're good articles. They will then get cited by other people. So when they go into their reference list, they'll cite your journal article, and that gets a point for you, basically. And so for how many ever articles you have published for a year, you're going to get so many citations based off of those articles, and thus we will get an idea of how impactful that journal is. If it gets cited a whole bunch, that means that it is pretty relevant. It means it's being used to influence a lot of other research or a lot of other papers that are being done out there, being published. So you can see here this impact factor for 2018 specifically, for all the articles that were published in 2018, that there were 862 citations for 196 articles published in clinical toxicology. You just divide that out, and you get an impact factor of 4.398, which basically means for every article that they published that year, it got cited roughly 4.5 times, or pretty close to it, which is pretty good, right? And so you're going to find the impact factors vary depending on the topic that you're looking at. So more popular topics, so things like pediatrics or surgery, may have larger impact factors just because there's more people doing research there, or publications and things like that. But the useful thing we can do with impact factors is compare them to other journals within the same sort of category. So for instance, here's one called the International Journal of Toxicology. Now we saw for ClinTox that had about 4.4. This one only has an impact factor of 1.223, which means for every article that they publish, they get roughly one citation out of that. Okay, so if I were to kind of look at those two together and I was saying, well, which one is more impactful, I would probably say that clinical toxicology is more impactful because they're getting cited more, which means more people are reading it and more people are using those articles. Okay, so it's useful to look within a category to say, okay, well, what are like the big name journals here within this group? So it's kind of like, how important is this journal? And so, with publications and things like that, this can be useful too to determine like where you might want to get yourself published. So for instance, my case report that I had that was about, getting vancomycin absorbed in patient with C. diff. That was not groundbreaking research. That was just a case report that I found interesting during rotations, and so I was not going to go and publish to somewhere that had a really huge impact factor, because it just wouldn't be very likely to be accepted because they're taking more original research and things like that. But if I can go and find something that may be a little bit further down the list has a smaller impact factor, I'm more likely to be accepted to a place like that. So that's actually what I ended up doing, is the same thing here, kind of going through different pharmacy journals to find one that seemed like a good fit for my article, and then also had an acceptable impact factor to actually get published in, right? So anyway, so again, this is just a way to kind of measure up journals against one another to see how important they are. Now we saw for Clintox it was like 4.4. Let's look at a really big time journal. So let's look at something like JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. Now JAMA is something that even most lay people have likely heard of, and so it makes sense that these are going to be a really important journal. It's going to get a lot of citations, and if you actually look at it, 51.273. For every article they put out in 2018, it got cited about 51 times. That's pretty important, right? So that means that a lot of people are looking at that research and utilizing it for their own research and their own publications here. So if you can find something really big like that, that's great. The chances of someone like me ever getting published in JAMA are pretty close to zero, right? These are going to be like kind of big name researchers, people who have a lot of grant funding behind them, things like that. So again, but it's good to be able to look at different journals to get an idea of how important or how legitimate they can be, and sometimes impact factors are useful there. So one of the other things you can also do, which are handy, is if you actually go through and you click on Browse by Category. This is helpful too if you're trying to find some journals that maybe you hadn't heard of or maybe you weren't familiar with. And you can actually go through different topics here, right? And so let's go ahead and think of, let's go surgery, because a lot of people might be interested in going to surgery one day. By clicking on this is neat because you can actually go and then find all of the different journals that fit into that category, right? So scrolling down, I'm going to go here and actually click on this journal's number, and they actually give me like a ranked order based off impact factor of different surgery journals, right? So you can see here up at the top we have JAMA Surgery and then the Annals of Surgery. Notice here a lot of big name journals will actually have sort of spin-offs of themselves, so that are mainly focused on a topic. So they have like JAMA Surgery, you may have like JAMA Oncology, things like that. But you can see here, these are kind of the two big ones in the surgery realm. But let's say you wanted to look down and find something that was either more niche or maybe something that was a little less, not reputable, but a little less sort of, kind of like your big bougie journals, right? So you're like JAMA's pretty bougie. Like if you're thinking about kind of big name, bigwig art journals, looking down here at something smaller, say if I had like a say I saw an interesting case report while on rotation at a bariatric surgery office. Something like this, like obesity surgery, might be something reasonable to get into depending on how interesting the actual article itself is that you wrote. So anyway, so again, looking at impact factors can be useful. We'll have a little assignment. We're going to take 3 of the journals that you were citing, and I want you to go ahead and figure out what their impact factors are and sort of kind of what the rank is going to be for those within their general sort of niche or their general sort of category there. So anyway, hopefully that was at least a little interesting, and now you know what I'm talking about when I mention impact factors. But if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.